In this special series, we are joined by Te Rūnanga o Ngāi Te Rangi nui iwi to bring recognition, remembrance and commemoration to the Battle of Te Ranga. Taringa areare mai ki te rongo a Des Tata o Ngai Tamarawaho.
When you look back in the history, Te Ranga was an outcome of what took place at Gate Pa. And because the British troops were embarrassed at Gate Pa, they had to tidy the score. We knew that was going to happen, so that's why we moved forward to setting up a pa where we could fight that second battle and hopefully do the same thing as we did back at Gate Pa. So they already learnt about the trench warfare and they knew they had to get there first before we started to dig in. And that's the reason we were only about 3 feet deep when the British troops turned up on that morning. They never realised the planning that took place. Our leaders at Gate Pa, I'm talking about Hakaraya, I'm talking about Auri Purirake, Penetaka. Those were the leaders of the battles when they came back here to Gate Pa. They learned trench warfare from up north through Kawiti. Coming out of Gate Pa, there was a big change that took place in the numbers. We had 240 Maori warriors at the first battle. When it came to the second, we only had 140. Now you would say, well, the other 150 or odd never died at Gate Pa, that's why they weren't there. They had literally pulled out. The government had already started dividing us at that point, and that's why you saw change. If we go back to the hui they had on the banks of the Waimapu, that was the night before. It was looked at fighting up at Te Ranga because there was an A shape. So that was it. That night they came up and early that morning they started digging. And then that's where they're supposed to have been seen. So they dug and it's done quite different. Like I said, the quarter moon, say like 8 feet long by 4 feet or 3 feet wide, and then dug down deep, and then a gap of another 3 feet, and then doing the same thing again, but shaping it in the quarter moon. And that's how that was done. Because, it was said, I remember giving the cordial to the Kurokokiri. I said to them, I'm glad you are doing it. And then they said, why? And I said, because there were kids there. So if we can portray that, we got a feedback on that about saying that was not the case. We did not kill kids. There were no kids there, but they were there. And then you had the rest of the warriors. But because it was digging time, no one had guns. There were no guns there. But because they were told that they were digging in, they got together 400 troops from here under Colonel Greer. So they moved, got to Gate Pa just after 9 o'clock. And then they got up to Te Ranga just before 12. So they got to Te Ranga, they had 400 men, and they only had one gun by the gate, down the bottom gate, not the one by the main road. So Colonel Greer, he sees too many people. He's feeling uncomfortable, so he starts to panic. So he sends 2 men back to Te Papa to bring up another gun and 200 more men. So he panicked, and then he said to his men, let's attack. And the reason why he attacked, he saw the dirt changing colour. It was black, and then it was starting to become off black, reddish. He knew they were getting too deep, and that's the reason why they went up there early. So he told his men, charge. So they started firing the big gun, and that was a 6-pounder. And then they went for about an hour. In the meantime, what was happening in the pa, the women and children were told to get out, and they had to go over on the eastern side at a place called Omataka. And now you go there, is where the water choppers, you look over there, it's high, and the old people, the kids, had to go over. That's largely what happened there. So they kept on firing in, and then it came to a point where Greer said, well, it's time to take the pa. 400 men walking towards the pa, and they got about 30, 40 yards, maybe a bit more out from the pa, and all they saw was what was left of the men folk stand up from out of those trenches and walk towards them. And they walked towards them, and they had their lives taken out there, all of them. Why would we do that? Why did we do that? One of them was lying on the ground and he was just about on his last breath. This captain knelt over and said to him, "Why didn't you stop? You could see that we were an overwhelming force." And this is what he said, "Me mate aho mo te whenua. If I am to die, let it be for the land." And that's what happened there. They took a few prisoners and the sick. Otherwise, pretty much everyone that died there. Would have been at least 115 or 20 of them, roundabout. So they were all put back into the trenches, what was left of the trenches, and buried them there. But we've got to remember that the pa went across the middle of the road to Paipa. It went right across the road. You go to Gate Pa, Cameron Road goes right to the pa. And everywhere in the country, you see what they had done to our pa. They make sure they put a road through it. Rangiriri, yeah, also, yeah. And also up in Lawari's pa. It's right in the middle of the road. It's right in the corner where the road is. That's how you get rid of a history of a people. So you couldn't get any centre of the pa more than that, and what happened at Te Ranga.
Huri mai a taringa kia whakaoko ki ngā rongo mō Henare Taratoa. Henare Wiremu Taratoa. The history books have inaccurately recorded facts about this leading ancestor of ours. The details of these records have spread far and wide and are in contrast with the oral history of his direct descendants. The majority of these state him as having no descendants, a bold assumption. What follows are the oral accounts of the living descendants of Henare Taratoa. Pererika Henare Taratoa was born at Ōpaunui somewhere around 1830, the second of three children born to Te Ohu, also known as Hoani Taratoa of Ngāti Hinewa, and Tātai, also known as Hera Tokomoku of Tengare ki o Tamataha. He had an older sister, Hinewa, also known as Meremaihi Taratoa, and a younger brother, Iho, also known as Hoanitama Taratoa, who was killed in the Battle of Gate Pa. Pererika was a pupil of Henry Williams at the mission school in Russell, Bay of Islands. It was also here that he was baptised and that Pererika became Henare Wiremu Taratoa in honour of Henry Williams. Following on from his time in Ngāpuhi, he then attended the school of Bishop Selwyn, Hoani Tapu Te Kai Kaufau i Te Rongopai in Waimate, Auckland. It was here that Henare was first married to Emily Terua. This union bore one daughter, Ani Paraneha Taratoa. Henare had the privilege to accompany Bishop Selwyn on his trips to Polynesia and Melanesia. It was in Nengone, the Loyalty Islands, that Henare gave his first sermon. Not long following his time in the Loyalty Islands, Henare relocated to Otaki, the iwi of his kuia Te Rūtakai. Here he was a school teacher and a lay reader. Henare married Rahapa whilst in Otaki. Their union bore three children, Ana Keita Taratoa, Hera Ana Taratoa, and Pererika Taratoa. Henare was known to be a rebel who publicly disagreed and penned many letters to government and officials, protesting that Māori language was a valid option for teaching the Māori people about the church and about the Bible. It was due to this rebellious nature that Henare was never granted an ordination and thus would never become a minister. He was left to remain a lay reader, despite his great love for his hāhi and his whakapono. Henare eventually returned home to Tauranga Moana. He established a Christian school for Māori children. Here he taught them Bible studies, how to read and write Pākehā. Hinare made it a priority to have the entirety of the then Taratua family baptised. Along with this baptism came new names, Christian or biblical. Hinare did this purposefully and meaningfully to shield the Taratua family from a curse they believed was put upon them. Hinare's family made up the majority of Ngāti Hinewa, a once large body of people. At the time of Hinare, the Taratua family numbered less than 15. Hinare was famed the world over for his true Christian example, known as the author of the Code of Conduct for the Gate Pa War, and also his chivalry in aiding wounded and dying soldiers of the enemy in the heat of fire. Hinare died on the battlefield of Te Ranga in 1864, sewing into his jacket pocket the orders of the day. At the top of the paper, a karakia reading, E te atua o ngā wā katoa, I karangaia koe au pononga ki te whakaatu I te tika me te pono ki ngā tangata katoa. Homai te ora, homai te kaha, I runga I te ingoa o tautama o ihu karaiti, te kaiwhakaora o ngā mea katoa. Āmine. And at the bottom, from the book of Romans, chapter 12, verse 20. Ki te mate kai tau hoariri, whangaia. Ki te mate wai, whakainumia. If thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. E kore koe e warewaretia kei te kai whakamārie o ngā pakanga o te moana. Pererika, Hinare, Weremu, Taratua. Manatu, Manatoa, Mana ake ake. Whakatarea, whakaaro mai, ki ngā kupu, a tai aho, hori, ngā tai.
I was a young man of about 25 when we fought the Pākehā Gate Pa. And that year, many of our people had gone to assist the Waikato natives. We were waiting to be attacked by the imperial troops at Te Tiki o Te Hingarangi when news came that soldiers had been landed at Te Papa Tauranga. So we hurried back across country to defend our own homes. Our leaders drew up a code of regulations for the conduct of the fighting. It was resolved that barbarous customs should not be practiced by us, that the wounded should be spared, and the dead should not be mutilated, that we should not harm unarmed persons. In short, to fight fairly and squarely on the same lines as the Pākehā. For some time we waited for a reply to our challenges, but none came. We could not understand them making no move of any sort. Some days went by, and at last we resolved to occupy and fortify a position on the ridge known as Pukehinahina, about 3 miles from the town of Tauranga. This place was called Gate Pa by the Europeans because a ditch and bank had been made across the narrow ridge connecting the two arms of Tauranga Harbour, Waikareo and Waimapu. One morning we were all out at the back of the fortification where the food was being cooked, waiting for our breakfast. Suddenly, as our eyes ranged over the country towards Te Papa, we saw unusual activity in the soldiers' camp. The warriors of the Queen, soldiers and sailors, were marshalled in array of battle, and then they advanced towards us. 'Twas an army that marched against our fort. A great body of infantry and a number of cannon. Nana, the hour was at hand. Grandly did they march, strode they towards us as one man, with measured resounding footsteps and their great guns rumbling along. The British assault on the Pa was delivered about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The storming party, all about 300 men, rushed gallantly to the attack. Then we loosed our fire on them when they got well within range. Still, they charged on, with bayonets fixed and swords waving, cheering as they came. Through and over the breach walls they rushed. They entered the ruins of the larger Pa. Most of it was in their possession. But all at once the tide of war was changed. Up leaped our men from the rifle pits as if vomited from the bowels of the earth, and together with those who had been forced back by the 68th Regiment in the rear, began a deadly hand-to-hand fight with the storming party. The defenders of the smaller pa held their position and raked the attackers with a heavy fire. Men fell thick and fast. Skulls were cloven. Māori were bayoneted. Ngāi Te Rangi patiti bit deep into white heads and shoulders. The place was soon full of dying and dead men, Pākehā and Māori. We in the eastern position of the large pa stood firm. It was terrible work, but soon over. The Pākehā were driven clean out of the pa as they ran our men falling upon them. They fell back on their main body below our works, leaving many of their dead and wounded strewn on the battleground. The Māori, though victorious, had suffered severely. We adhered strictly to the terms of the battle covenant and harmed not the wounded, nor interfered with the bodies of the dead. In the night we collected arms, accoutrements and ammunition from the British dead. Then, recognising that our defences no longer existed, we abandoned the ruined pa under cover of darkness, retiring in good order and spirits. We crept quietly through the lines of the 68th at the rear. We retired to the Wauku pa and then dispersed to our various stations along the edge of the forest.